Cost Current will pull in your product cost directly using a spreadsheet formula. If you haven't seen the video on how to update your cogs in Gorilla ROI, please refer to that video. Otherwise, you won't be able to pull in all of these costs. So once you've added these costs into the system, into your account, then you can use a formula such as cost current, and it's automatically generate all of this table for you. Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. I'm going to delete that one formula. On this particular account, test seller 2, okay, so I'm just going to highlight that in so that you know that this is the nickname that I'm going to be using. And I've got this in purple so that you know which formula that we're referencing. I've got the formula now to list all the SKUs for test seller 2. So we have it here on the left side. Now, the most basic form of using cost current is Gorilla _ cost current. Okay, and depending on your locale settings, I'm going to use comma in my formulas, but you may use semicolon. So it's asking me for the seller ID, so test seller 2, comma, and this info box is really going to help you out because now it's going to tell me it's highlighting period, but the beauty of this formula is that you really only need to know the seller account, and it's going to dump out all the costs, the latest current cost that you've entered. Okay, so if I do that, it's now going to automatically generate that formula or generate that table where it now has pulled in all of the cost and the currency and particular the marketplace, etc., as well as the date the cost was entered. So for example, you can see here that the cost $192 for this product was entered on what is this? July 7th, 2022, right? And the cost hasn't changed until now, which means the current cost is obviously still going to be $1.92. Now, if I go back, or if I go into our backend and then I change this to, like, say, okay, in 3 months from now, this is going to change to, say, $2.92, then the date is then going to update automatically at that time and pull in the cost once it's been updated. Okay, otherwise it's going to dump out anything with a cost and the associated date, currency, the product title, ASIN, and the SKU, etc. It's going to generate this table. Now let's go through these different inputs. So this is the most basic form. Okay, comma. So why do we have a period if it's just pulling in the current cost, right? So let's say, I'm going to undo that. Let's say I want to actually find out what was my current cost, or what was the latest costs in, say, like January of 2023, right? So I'm going to do this. Now, for the period, I'm going to do comma, let's do this. Okay. And now it's going to pull in all of the values up to, that was valid up to 2023 January, and you'll see that the table has now become much more shorter. You're not going to see any SKUs where the costs were entered after January, right? So you'll see everything was everything is in 2022 up to December, right? So again, if I change this to 2023-02, okay, it's only going to show all the costs up to January. So now these two have now been filtered in. So you can see January 25, since I want to see it up to the period of February. Okay, so that's what the current means, the latest up to that period. And this is going to be good. So if you have a column, and I'm going to generate another table for you, and you'll see where if you want a monthly by month calculation of what the costs were, then you'll be able to do something like 2023-01 here, 2023-02, 2023-03, and you're also going to be able to track your costs on a per month basis to see what is what the costs were at that particular time. Okay, so that's that. Now let's move on to the next one. So we've entered the period. Now let's enter the SKU. So same thing, the SKU, you can either enter one or you can enter an array of SKUs. So you can select the whole range. Okay, and then if I do that, then it's going to show me all of the SKUs that I've selected, only the ones I've selected for this period. And it's going to show me, let me delete that so it's less confusing. It's now going to show me obviously everything up to that period. And then if I delete this date, okay, it's now going to revert back to showing me what the current or the latest is. So now you can see costs from March 999, March 11. If I undo the formula, or I'm going to undo it so that the date comes back in. Okay, so the date comes back in, and you'll see that there's only, how many values are there? 9 values. Now I'm going to delete this, and you'll see that all of the values came up for the SKUs that I've selected, and it's also showing me the latest, because in the prior video that I shot before taking this, I updated some cogs and added into the system March 11th, and so that's what's showing up. Okay, so same thing as usual. Keep following the formula as the highlight progresses to the next input, right? So the output is something that I have to explain. So output is, there's two values. Okay, what you see by default here where it generates a table, I'm calling a dump mode. Okay, it's just dumping all of that data directly onto your spreadsheet. And this way it's the easiest, it's the fastest. If you don't know anything at all, at least I'm confident that you're going to know how to use, say, COSTCURRENT, enter your seller ID, and then it's just in dump mode. It's just going to dump out everything that's associated with that account. Okay. The other input that we have is called values. And as the name suggests, it's only going to display the values. So rather than generating this table, if I do enter values like this, oops, I can't spell, and then I press enter, now it's just going to show me only the costs. Now we could have just done the cost like this, but we wanted to provide some extra details and just a very fast, easy get started type formula. So you can have two versions. If you want more fine control, use values. If you just want to see everything in bulk, use dump. If you need things in a column by column, then use values only. So now I get to what I was alluding to before, where let's say I have 2023-01, 2023-02, 2023-03, okay? And I'm going to just lock in some references. So F4 locks that in, C1, no, F4, lock that in, okay? So now if I drag it, you'll see all the different costs for each of that period, right? So this is, and you'll see the difference here where on this particular product, for January it was 154, February 154, but then on March, it changed to 1048. And this would be how you can also track the costs on a month-to-month basis and make sure that nothing is going haywire. Okay, so let's expand that out a bit. I'm going to do 17. Okay, see if there's any other changes that we can see. Now, I think this was the only product where I was messing around with it. So you can see how, but you get the idea of how you can use this to have a month-by-month or week-by-week analysis of your cost data and keep track of how things are going on. And again, this is all going to be automated. Everything comes up with a single formula. Okay, so that's in values mode. I'm going to delete values, and then I'm just going to skip and go to marketplace. Obviously, you can select US, UK, etc. Count is if you have, let's say you have like 100,000 SKUs, right? Then there's a good chance that it's going to time out. And so this is only relevant to people who have tens of thousands or 100,000 SKUs, right? So then you can enter something like 1,000. It's only going to display the 1,000 for the particular period, etc. I'm just going to skip that. And in sort mode, okay, sort mode is only going to work when in dump mode. So like I said, this function is now a bit more complicated. There's much more variables compared to the other functions where we've added multiple different features into it. Sorting is only going to work when you use, say, a dump mode, okay? If you're trying to, say, pull in all of this, if you've already got a range of SKUs, right? And then you want to pull in the values. It doesn't make sense to try and sort these values, right? Because your SKUs are already listed here. But if you didn't have any SKUs assigned and you were doing something like this, okay, let me delete this, to generate this dump mode table, right? Look at the SKU. It's in pretty much alphabetical order by default, ascending. Okay, but now let's change this to go to the sort, and right now by default SKU ascending. If I want to change it to say date ascending, okay, then what that is going to do is it's going to sort based on the cost date, and this way you can check, quickly check using a formula whether you want to sort by SKU or date, ascending, descending, and just a quick way to look at things depending on how you want to do it. Okay, so that's sort, and then the date is obviously if you want to use custom. Okay, so in the period, if you want to use custom instead of this, because you have, whoops, don't need that. Let's say do custom, okay, comma, and let's say the date is going to be, say, 2023-01-01, okay. Then it's going to be showing you all the values, the dumping or the current costs up to 2023-01-01. And so that's just going to give you some more extra finer control. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense, and that will give you an idea of how you can use it. Oh, before I end, another way that you could also use it is just create another tab. So let's say I want to create like a sort of table, right? Rather than trying to create and reference and pull in all of these formulas for the cost and then mixing and matching with your current models and calculations, it's always easier to create another tab, get this out of the way, and then do something like equals Gorilla _ cost current test seller 2. Okay, and then just keep this as it is. And now when you want to reference something, you can do equals VLOOKUPs or index matches or whatever to find the SKU, to find the matching cost, because you know that this formula is always going to be updated with whatever the cost date is. Now, if I go into the admin like here, and then I change something, so for example, from 132 to something else, then it's automatically going to update to say whatever the new number is if I change this. And that way you always have the latest cost to use in your, say, profit and loss or calculations or margin analysis and things like that. So I hope that makes sense, and if it doesn't, please give us a shout.